Okay, so chapter 8 of The Handmaid's Tale, and I'm doing a zoom in on AO3 looking at social and historical context. Now, where this fits into the chapter is at the beginning. There's the discussion of the men hanging on the wall who have committed gender treachery, which is quite clearly implied to be homosexuality. And just a little bit further in, just before halfway, it's page 55 in my copy of the text, when the narrator looks back on Serena Joy's past and what she used to do after she stopped singing. So that's where it comes into play in chapter 8 specifically. It does come in throughout the rest of the novel as well. So, Atwood notably has a collection of clippings which she used to build the historical and social context of The Handmaid's Tale. And included in these were several things to do with the right-wing movement of the 1980s. This was a religious, fundamentalist, conservative movement called pressure groups, and they spoke out against moral issues, some of which might appear quite relevant to The Handmaid's Tale, such as abortion, divorce, contraception, pornography, and gay rights. So what you can really see is that all of these things are forbidden in Gilead. So effectively, Gilead is fitting in with these right-wing fundamentalist groups' ideas. And in that sense, despite the opinion of Mary McCarthy, for example, that it is unrealistic, what Atwood was writing about was very current in 1980s America. Now, these right-wing fundamentalist groups, they were strong backers of Reagan, who himself promoted the domestication of women, so women being in the home, and his wife Nancy was seen as an ideal, submissive woman, but she was very supportive. Interestingly, though, he did appoint a woman to the Supreme Court. That's a side note because it is contrary to the norm. And another character who you may have heard of, who was very involved in the movement, was Phyllis Schlafly. So she was the wife of a televangelist, and she spoke out directly against feminism, advocating the home as the place of women. Similarly to Serena Joy, or what the narrator tells us Serena Joy did in the build-up to Gilead. And what's really interesting about Phyllis Schlafly is that she preached this very strongly, yet she probably, I can't swear for how much she did as a mother and a housewife, but in addition to writing, she had a radio show. She appeared on television every week. She was a lawyer. She chaired a defence committee for the Daughters of the American Revolution. She was actually named Best Mother one year. She had 6 children and 14 grandchildren, and she wrote, I think, 27 books in total. Her radio show was daily and broadcast on approximately 600 radio stations. She was a political activist and a Republican. So actually what Phyllis Schlafly was doing did not really fit in with her doctrine. Similarly to how the narrator comments on the fact that what Serena is doing doesn't fit in, or when she was speaking, Serena presented what she was doing as a necessary fault in order to encourage others. And Phyllis Schlafly was a very big presence as an anti-feminist. In fact, some of her words are quite shocking. So these are some quotes from Phyllis Schlafly, which I'm just going to put it out there that I don't agree with these. They may be in my video, but that does not equate to support from them. I'm not going to read them out because I can hardly bear to. But they are an interesting read, and they show you how stringent the mood was in the 1980s. So, now when she refers to the Equal Rights Amendment, that was also known as ERA, and Phyllis Schlafly is thought to be one of the key people behind the fact that the Equal Rights Amendment was not passed. And then some of this backlash, it's worth noting, had been coming on since World War II. So obviously during World War II, many more women got jobs and contributed to the war effort. And there was an initial backlash in the 1960s, which Atwood would have also seen, being born in 1939, which was the idea of women returning to their place at home after the war. So Thatcher is another member of this right-wing backlash group in the 1980s, and she got on really well with Reagan. It is quite ironic that she was the first British female Prime Minister, but she was herself an anti-feminist. It all linked in with the conservative political movements that's looking at the right wing. I'm not going to go into politics, but basically conservatives are more interested usually in personal wealth to some extent, but really they're capitalists. Conservatism is capitalism, not, I'm sorry, just ignore me when it comes to politics. Anyway, so they advocated the free market as part of capitalism. Also, in 1979, you had Afghanistan invaded by the Soviet Union. So that's going on in the Middle East, and that saw the end of détente during the Cold War period. And détente took place during the 1970s, which was a relaxation of tensions between America and the Soviet Union. But these tensions were reinvigorated in the 1980s, and that contributed to the right-wing backlash because the Soviet Union is communist and communism is the extreme left. There was support for the idea of the nuclear family. Reagan launched the war on drugs. A lot of it was religious, which again is anti-communist because communists don't believe in religion. Famously, Marx described religion as the opium of the people. Oh, sorry, I've got conservatism twice. Reagan also cut taxes a lot.